guitar's gone a little sharp. I hope you're all well. Ooh. We're going to be playing in E minor today. I think it's time to change strings. Oh, I think my guitar needs to settle a little bit. Well, anyway, I'll get back to tuning in a moment, but please say hello and where you're tuning in from. I hope you're all well. Where do we have... I need to bring up... I've lost all the comments. People saying hello. Let me see if I can bring that up. Here we go. There you are. Hi, Brent. Cipriano. Such a great name. Stephen, great to see you. Jeff, hi. Thanks for saying hello. Tuning can be... I find out when I get flustered in a concert situation, I can rush a little bit with tuning, but it can be kind of enjoyable in a way. Just really taking your time to listen, hearing the beats. Oh, there's a sharp one. That sounds better. So we're playing a piece today in E minor, and it's always very nice to tune to that chord, because if you tune to one key, it probably will be in a distant key. It might be quite out of tune, but playing the nice tonic chord and really just enjoying that can be a really nice way to tune to the key. Now, I'm going to dive straight in. Thank you for saying hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me and see me clearly. I'm going to dive straight into just playing through this piece that we're going to be talking about today, because some of you may not know it. I have so many things on the desk, it's ridiculous. This period of time has been very busy, and so the desk is very messy. Let me play you some music. There's a hand. It is such a beautiful piece of music. I love this piece. This is by Julio Salvador Sagreras. Sagreras, that's better to say. He was an Argentine composer who is quite well known for a few particular famous pieces, Maria Luisa being one of them, which many of you in the Academy are familiar with. El Colibri, the hummingbird, very famous sort of virtuosic piece. And also his educational material is very well known and widely used. I haven't dug into them too in depth, to be honest, but I know that there are 7 books, and it's a similar approach a little bit to CGC in that they're graded structured materials, hyperstructured materials. So actually, come to think of it, I really should dive in. I should really dive into those materials more. But he's an Argentine composer and performer. He performed a lot between sort of the early 20th century and around the mid-1930s. He died around 1942, so that gives you a bit of a time frame. And this piece is of interest because it seems like a tremolo piece, and it sounds like a tremolo piece. You would think... And of course, you could play it as a tremolo piece. However, it's actually marked in as... Oh, you can't see my right hand yet, but it's I is the intended alternation. So it's an interesting piece in terms of education because it's actually a really wonderful developer for the IM alternation, your strength and speed. And I personally like to use this as a warm-up piece or a development piece for speed and articulation in the right hand. And I like to accompany it actually with the Mauro Giuliani. This is an etude number 5, opus 48. Both are wonderful for developing IM alternation, speed, and also sort of articulation and isolation. So let me just take a moment to say hello to everyone that's been saying hello. Hello. Spiller, great to see you again. George from Scotland, wonderful. Kerry is, oh, I get a virtual hug from Kerry. Thank you, Kerry. Is this book 3, lesson 4? Yes, this is one of the Academy repertoire pieces. This is actually the set piece for the grade 8 technical routine. Now, I wouldn't necessarily, this is in grade 8, but I have to say that it's not difficult on several levels. It does have a difficulty, I think, to make it smooth and flowing and musical, and I think it can be used as a tremolo piece, which is kind of what we do in grade 8. We build up to these tremolo pieces. But fingering-wise, it's not too difficult. I would put the left hand at about a grade 5. That's where I put it. Oh, Shannon from Newfoundland, great to have you here. Sultan from Saudi Arabia, great to have you back again. Thank you. Mark from Sydney. Oh, I'm jealous. I miss Sydney. And Italy and New Zealand. Hi, Richard. Fantastic. Wonderful to have people from all over the world. So let's dive into this piece. I think that it is a piece that's not too widely known. It's flown a little bit under the radar, but it's an absolute gem of a piece. I'll tell you why I love this piece. First of all, we get a very resonant E minor harmony with a singing melody up high. So it just sounds good on the guitar. And then the melody itself is very gentle and lilting. And it's just a beautiful melody. Sometimes I guess we don't really need to dive into things more than that just to say it's just a stunningly beautiful melody. And I would say if you're going to learn this piece, the first port of call would be to familiarize yourself with that melody as best as you can. And we're going to do that together. Feel free if you're alone. You don't have to be alone, but feel free if you want to sing along with me if you can start to gather the melody. But I'm going to actually sing the melody. Now, if I can sing the melody, then you can sing the melody, because I am the worst singer known to mankind. And it's allergy season, so enjoy that in this rendition. But when I often talk to people about singing melodies, that's what this would sound like. There's our note, it's a B. And I'm just going to play the accompaniment very lightly. Get that high. So, look, beside all singing things aside and little mistakes and what have you, it really is the fastest way to get your ear and your intuition aligned with the melody. It is imperative that you have a concept of the melody before you let all the finger work throw you off and get you obsessed with shifts and clarity and barres and things like that. You just want to live and breathe that melody. A couple of things that become very obvious when we take away this technical aspect of this sort of tremolo sound is that I think there's a very clear two big phrases here, and that we heard the phrases are interspersed with this. So even there, I think we get some insight into analyzing this piece. Two big phrases, and maybe there's some partitions of those phrases in between. Also, when we think tremolo pieces, I think a lot of people associate that with speed. But I don't think that kind of playing where it's a technical kind of sound actually suits this piece. It's marked larghetto, so it's broad and slow, not necessarily largo, it's not incredibly slow, but it's on a slow, broad time frame, tempo. And so that's where we can live with this. And I think we can really relax, and it takes off the pressure of having to play any particularly fast techniques. So next port of call might be to actually have a look at the score. Thank you, Carrie. Of course. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of it today. It's been a week and a half, and I've been speaking. We had a quarterly meeting We had our quarterly meeting today, which ran for several hours, so my voice is just a bit shot. Thank you, Kerry, very much for letting me know. So the sound should be back now. Let me start that again. Funny comments coming in. All right. Now, as I said, we just sang through our melody as best we could. This is the melody up top. Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing, you know, you're seeing all of these notes, but I'm singing a very simple melody. Well, that's actually what happens in a tremolo. I'm going to keep calling this a tremolo piece, although we're not doing a tremolo technique, is that we take these many notes, and the effect that we want to create is that of a sustained, almost sung melody. So here, let me just get rid of that. So the notes stay on the note B all this time, and then they go to C, and then back to B, right? So in effect, the sound we should get is B, C, B, and then it continues on. And the real skill of this is that we want to create the illusion, the effect of sustained melody on the guitar, which is an effect and is an illusion because we're playing many notes in great succession. So we sang through that, and I think singing through that several times is going to be a great way to do that. The next thing we might look at will be the accompaniment. We have a relatively simple but beautiful accompaniment here, and true to many tremolo pieces, we have just running eighth notes that are arpeggiating harmonies underneath. And this is no different. So E, G, B, G, we have an E minor arpeggio going here. Now the absolute most important thing you want to do from the beginning is to have a very subdued accompaniment. Nice and soft, so we get plenty of room for the top melody to soar above without having to fight for its clarity. You know, and one way to work on this is obviously in isolation, I would suggest first. But then there is a way also when you're playing through the piece to listen, put your ear's attention just to the bass voice, the thumb. Have a listen. I'll play through a couple of, so I'll zoom out a little bit. I'll play through a little bit, and just what I'm going to do is ask you to put your attention onto the bass voice and just listen to the thumb. Now I'm going to play it as best I can, but I want you to be a critic. All right, I want you to say, okay, well, actually, you know, in measure 4, it was a little loud, or it was a little heavy on the thumb, or, you know, so I want you to put your attention there. And the point here is not actually to criticize or criticize yourself. It's really to bring your attention to the balance and if there's any inconsistencies there. So let's just hear a few passages. Now, what you may have noticed is that I kept it very soft, right? Very soft here, as the melody was also soft. Now, as you can see, the melody gets quite high here. We go up to a C. Same happens down here. We get up to some higher notes. The melody goes higher. And so I'm not keeping the bass line, the thumb, very soft all the time. What I'm doing is as the melody soars and has a crescendo, so too does that other voice. But it's in relative proportions to the melody. So the melody always has the spotlight here, save for one moment, and then we try and keep the accompaniment in a secondary role, albeit albeit supporting. So I'm going to play this again. Have a listen to my, is this going to work? Yeah. Crescendo here. We have tab. I didn't realize I had the tab version. That's okay. Have a listen as I grow here with the melody. Okay, so I'll go from the top again and keep an ear out for those two crescendos. Right, so I build up the melody, but I don't do both. All right, so that would be my first port of call in terms of learning this piece. I would go through and I would look at the balance between the two. Now I'm going to come back to you just for a second. Hello. I'm actually going to go and find the non-tab version because it's going to be easier to navigate the page. Here we go. Right. Sorry about that. As I said, I am slightly out of it today. Please give me a little bit of latitude. Okay, let's head on back to the music. That's a little better. We get more information in a smaller space here. Okay, so we have this melody and harmony throughout. And when does it change? Once again, I'm going to play from the top. You're going to get more and more used to the melody here. You're going to listen to the bass again, and there's one moment in here where we really feature the bass. And what do we do at that point? So you can it's quite clear that suddenly here, the bass gets featured. So, and you can see it here, that the bass suddenly, where we are, from here, we actually get sort of a linear bass line instead of an arpeggio. So from up here, we've got... actual line, which is I don't think I can sing that low. Right, so that's going to be our one exception where we take away the focus from the melody, and you can see it's just B, B, B. It doesn't move. It's very static, and that way it gives us the attention gets shifted to the bass line. So this is the one moment in the piece where we flip the relationship from what voice is getting the spotlight, and it's for the majority of the time it's the upper voice, the melody, and then here we have a nice bass line that can act as a partition between the two large sections, and also gives us a nice chance to vary up some musicality. Now, some other notable musical aspects of this. We spent some live sessions recently talking about harmony, and here we have a C natural, and the harmony is E minor. So we start off here with a full arpeggiated chord, all chordal tones. And here we get a C going down to the B, right? So for all intents and purposes, if we took out that C natural in the second measure, it's E minor, E minor, right? And so that C natural is incredibly important. It's the most expressive thing that happens there. It's a minor second away from that B. And it's a real opportunity for us to be musically expressive. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. What could we do? We could go, if I play it very straight and flat dynamically, it still sounds nice, but I think it lacks any kind of direction. Now, let's see if I change my dynamics a little bit and I do a little crescendo on that. Oops. C, and then come back down to the B. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, I messed up the bass, but you can hear that has a really expressive movement there. Now, what happens if I play with a little bit of rubato, right? So I'm going to have some direction and then pull back once I get to this C natural, like it's physically a bit more difficult. I think that's very beautiful. So we're really milking that minor second non-chordal tone, which many of you would know is called a neighbor note in this setting, and we're making it very expressive. After that, we come back to chord tones. So it really is the most expressive note so far. What did I do that time? I put some vibrato on it as well. Let's have a listen to that. What about this note? This is a neighbor note too, but why isn't it as expressive? Well, it's because it is a chord tone. A B belongs to B7 there. So continuing on. This is now a C major chord. Now I think this is expressive too. Funnily enough, it seems that high C is an expressive focal point so far. That high C is expressive because it's our very first leap. So far, we have gone in stepwise motion. B, C, B, A, B, A, G, all stepwise. And what I mean by stepwise is one musical alphabet note to the next, no leaps. Like A, B, C, D, E, that's steps. Whereas here we get G going up to a C and back down to a G. So that's another place for being expressive. So what am I doing there? I'm putting it, lathering it on pretty thick just then, but what I'm doing, there was one noticeable thing is I'm actually doing a little bit of a glissando. Can we come back to you for this moment while I'm talking about it? Yes. Hello. What I'm doing there is actually, as we go up the first string, I'm actually leaving my fourth finger down. Now this is an interesting point that comes up quite a bit in musical pieces, because the question is how much? Because you can go, which I would say is on the sort of comical end of the spectrum, or a sort of special effect. Let's you find the moment. The reason that's so loud is I'm pushing down with my fourth finger. Loud, loud. It's the weight of the fourth finger. So the subtlety is going to come from how you manage the pressure of your finger as you slide. Let me see if I can give you a different set of examples, right? It's quite loud, quite strong, quite heavy in the finger. almost nothing. I tried to almost, I think I lifted on one of those shifts. Now, see if I can find some ones in between. That one had one on the way up, just a very gentle one. You can also hear some of them, you can actually, this is my favorite type, is increasing the pressure as you go along. So here, might be almost nothing, but you increase the pressure of your finger as you get towards your destination. And you get a little, actually a little bit of crescendo. Into the line. Just one moment. Yeah, okay. So that can be a really, I think, a really interesting way of sorry. That can be a really interesting way of playing around with the expressiveness of this. The Portamento glissando comes back a little bit later. So we had this glissando moment, but also I think we can follow this shaping in a similar way to before. We had, all right, and this time we have similar kind of crescendo, decrescendo. Let's have a listen in the flow. Right, very beautiful, such a beautiful moment. Now here's the next one. Let's go back to the score. Here we go. Back to the score. So we've had this beautiful expressive moment here, and now we're up to here. Right? This is another example. It doesn't seem as dramatic to me, maybe because of the range, it's not so high, but this is also a non-chordal tone. We've got a B7, which is the dominant 7 chord, and that G does not belong. It sort of tries to get away and immediately gets pulled back by kind of a magnet. So again, we can find, look at these swells that we're getting. We've got 1, here, 2, 3. Let's hear those in sequence. That time here, I actually didn't crescendo. What I did was I just slowed down a little bit. Another nice way to just feature that. And then here I think we get the largest movement of the phrase, although we've seen that high C before. It seems like the broadest harmony, that's C major to the F sharp diminished. And here we start descending in the line to a much lower place than we have. So we can also descend with our dynamic. It's a little harder here because this line is on the 2nd string. And then here we change and feature the bass. So that line, the melodic line, finishes on the B, and now the bass takes over. Here's a nice little example right here. Right, this can easily be played down in 1st position. Easily, I'll show you what that looks like here. It looks like this. But let's not waste an opportunity to be expressive. Even though it doesn't say it in the score, we could do this. I mean that. Sometimes, you know, Ben Vedder used to sort of explore these kind of moments in pieces with me as he was my teacher. And I think it's very much the idea of, why on earth are we doing this? Why are we playing guitar? Why are we putting all this time in? If not to enjoy these beautiful moments that pieces like this afford us? So, you know, why wouldn't we do this? Just broadening the experience, making it more expressive, offering more variety. And I think it's very, you know, fitting to the style as well, very, very song-like. It's kind of, we don't want to take away from the bass solo, the bass singer that gets to finally express something. We don't want to just plow through that material. We want to really give it some potency. It can be very expressive. Okay, so jumping back into the score, here we go. So now we're continuing on, we're repeating material. So we get to this point, and up to there, we've actually had, before there, I should say, the same material. So as we've described, there's different ways, different choices, vibrato, crescendo, ritardando, all these kind of tools at our disposal. So throughout this whole period here, you can choose to not have that scribble on the score, but you can also choose to use and deploy different musical choices the second time around. Maybe you just want to be a bit more straight and less expressive because you've heard it before, or maybe you want to be more expressive. That's up to you. That's your musical choices. Now, towards the end, like in so many pieces, we actually start to gather momentum in terms of our harmonic change. So instead of having a harmony for 2 bars or 2 measures or 1 measure, we actually start changing quite quickly. So this is the most probably left-hand technically challenging aspect of the piece, getting these nice glissandi, connecting the line all the way down, and then a nice ritardando to the end and placing that harmony. So I do realize that there have been a number of questions about tremolo coming through, and I will talk about the technique now. Now that we've sort of explored this piece in a musical way, let's talk about some of the technical aspects that do come up in this. So the number one question that I do see coming through is about the tremolo. Now, as I said before, the purpose of tremolo is not the technique itself. It's not something to be aspired to. What we actually want is to create an illusion of having sustained melody, like the sung voice. That's the sound we want. And so it's really how you do it with your right hand is a little bit beside the point, as long as it works. So there are people that do tremolo technique in very different ways. You know, the most common way is thumb playing those bass and middle voices, and then AMI repeating on a single string to get that continuous sound. Now you'll also find that you can use many other permutations of the right hand to get that. And in this piece, the permutation stipulated by Julio Sagreras is I. Why I like this so much is it really develops your I-M alternation and control and speed. But of course, you could use this to work on all sorts of permutations in the right hand. M, A, M, I, M, A, if that was of your choice, and any variations there in between. So let me play you a couple of examples. This is I and M. M-A. Back to I am. MA. I am. I'm messing it up there towards the end. But you can see how, in terms of a study, and this is Leccion, that was a lesson, in terms of a study, you want to be aiming for the ability to switch between them and not have too much variation. I could hear that the A and M, with many of us had like a slightly different sound. AMI sounded quite different to me, but that's quite a fundamental different movement. But you know what I mean? So you don't want to always have to fixate on I and M. It's a really great study, provides you the beautiful melody and wonderful harmony and just a lovely piece to work on all these different permutations. There are good examples of people who play all their tremolo with some of these permutations. Not everyone plays it AMI. So that is, I would say, the crux of this piece as a study is really about developing those right hand movements. Now I'll say, in addition to that, some of the left hand movements are quite crucial to this in terms of maintaining a flowing and legato melody. I've worked on this piece with a number of people, and one of the challenges is connecting that line. And there are two main things. One is going to be timing your movements in the left hand, and the other is going to be placing left hand fingers in sequence. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Right? If I wait, there's a timing balance here between when I shift to the next note. If I shift too early, I'm going to get the new note, the moved note, sooner than I need it. So I actually need to shift in a little bit of a delayed way. I'm not shifting on the first downbeat of the piece, of the bar. I'm actually shifting right on the second 16th note. And for some of you, that will come intuitively and it won't be an issue. But for some people, they tend to shift early or leave the other note a little bit early, and that starts cutting the sound. Or getting a bit of a gliss. Now, that's probably not the best example at the beginning. Let me give you a couple of better examples. That's something like that. Or here. Now here's a really tricky one in terms of, we can do this. Then you've got a 16th note to get to here, right? So that's the most logical fingering, but there's an instance there where we might change fingering to something quite awkward that will allow us to connect that line. So have a close look at my second finger and what I'm going to do with my fourth finger. So this is the fingering that's difficult. 2 on the A to 4 on the G. Have a look what I do with my fourth finger. So I'm sacrificing a very awkward feeling here to have the barre on the 4th fret and squeeze in my 4th finger, which is very possible, just a little looks and feels a little awkward, so that when I come down to the 3rd fret, my 4th finger is already there. There's no leaping, and that's really going to facilitate a very smooth voice leading. Now you don't need to do that, but that can be a really great solution. So that very careful shifting between melodic notes is going to make a big impact. And I will say there's another aspect of this, which is, let's say we get to, let's say measure 26. Right, look at my left hand. There's quite a lot going on in terms of movement. The tendency for some is to try and grab block chords. Maybe you've been taught at some point along the way that you have to play chords and have the fingers come down all at the same time. Well, that's not actually the case. That's probably in early stages learning block chords for other styles. it's the case. But here we want to be very sequential and choreographed. Look in the order I go. Fourth finger, barre, third finger, barre, third finger, second finger. And even here, 2, 2, then 4, not together, because we don't need them together. Yes, they're fractionally separated by a 16th note, but that's enough time for our hand to get a smooth spider-like kind of movement as opposed to grabbing. This is what it sounds like if you grab. Right, I have to get all those fingers down, but if you take the time, you can actually really have a smooth connection, but it's got to do with the way that you, the timing of how you bring those left hand fingers down. And that does make this piece a little more advanced, or it brings it to a more advanced level. So that covers the musical aspect, the shaping aspect, some expressive possibilities. We looked at some of the right hand figuration, which really is the crux of this pedagogical material. And then we also looked at some of the left hand challenges. Let's see if we have any questions. Brent asked, is the slower opening beat just standard performance practice for this piece? I think Brent is talking when I do this. When I sort of easing into it. That's just my personal choice. I've heard this played different ways and it can be effective in different ways, but I hear it in this way, sort of just a nice easing in, sort of rubato, having that elasticity. So no, it's not standard, it's just the way I'm choosing to do it. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm gonna just... Oh, Rick asked, how many repetitions of each variation would I recommend? In terms of study, you know, this is sometimes sometimes people want to do exercises and it's very straightforward. You know, I'm gonna do my exercises, but this would be, it is, and I use this as a wonderful warm-up. You know, it's not too taxing. You can play it slowly and it's still beautiful. And so I actually use this kind of as a warm-up development piece when I'm either before a performance or before just warming up in a practice session. As I said earlier, accompanied with study number 5, Opus 48 by Mauro Giuliani. And if you want to really get into the pieces that work on your right hand and wake it up, then you can add the Coste study number 23, which is also in here. Wonderful bass stopping study. So those three in combination are fantastic for getting the right hand warmed up. But also I find, for instance, if I play this piece, the one I mentioned, though, one of the things that can happen here is get like crushing the notes between I and M, where we really want them actually much more rhythmic. And I find personally, if I play this first, a bit messy, and then I play this with I and M, I go back to the other piece and it's much more rhythmic because there's something wonderful about this piece in the way it works out I and M. So I highly recommend it as a piece for warm-ups or development. Cipriano asked, are you able to expand why you tuned the guitar differently? You might have to clarify that. I mean, the way that I tuned the guitar at the beginning, perhaps you're asking about. I didn't tune it differently. It's standard tuning. What I was doing, though, is that I was tuning to the first string. I actually did quite a substantial video on this about tuning to the guitar, and one really good way to tune the guitar is to get the first string nice and in tune. You might use an electronic tuner, and then tune all the other strings to that one string, and I use the note E, so you're always getting a unison note or an octave to work from. Rohit asked about, can we go into the harmony of this piece? Sure, that's no problem. And Steve asked, can you go over your left hand fingering for measure 7? Okay. Yes, the answer is yes. All right, let me just, before well, I guess we can go back. So let me just clean this up a little bit. One of the nice things you can do with harmony, especially when you've got arpeggiation in the piece, is you can just stack those chords. So if you've got these eighth notes throughout the piece that play 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and you can just take those notes and stack them. Here we've got E, right? E, G, B, and you've played that as a block chord, you've got your E minor triad, and it's a bit more obvious as to what the harmony is. Okay, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we're at the end of the hour already. But here is a harmonic rundown. So we start off with E minor, right? And then that's why we get that expressive note there, because it's the only note that doesn't belong to E minor. Right? And then here we go. So that's the 1 chord. I don't know if this is going to work with. Okay, that's the 1 chord throughout there. And then we get 5, 7. Can you tell me what? Well, you don't have to type in the comments, but 5, 7 of E minor is B7. So we've got B, D sharp, F sharp, and A is the 7. So there's that chord there, right? 5, then back to 1. Oh, sorry, no, that's not 1. That is a C major chord, C, E, G, right? It's a 6, major 6. This is not the best. Here we go. 6. Sorry about these terrible Roman numerals. And then it stays there. C major. And back to 5, 7. B7. So we've just gone. All right. Great. Then we're back to the C major chord here, 6. And then this is the 2 chord, half diminished, right? F sharp, A, C, and then back to E minor, 1. Then we get a 4 chord for the first time, A minor. And we sit on the 5. A little less clear, but it's because the bass line's moving in a melodic way. That top line's almost acting as a pedal. So that's, I mean, it does change a bit down here, but it starts moving. We get a lot of E minors and B7s, 1s and 5s, but it's a bit more melodic oriented and moves faster. So that's the kind of harmony we've got. E minor, B7, E minor. Oh, sorry, excuse me. C major, B7, C major, F sharp, half diminished, E minor, A minor, B7. Yeah, so that's sort of the more or less. Now, the other question that did come through was, can you go over the left-hand finger for measure 7? 7, that's right here. Okay, well, to me, it doesn't strike me as particularly odd or unique. It's sort of, it's like a B7 shape. So 1 on the D sharp, 3 on the A, 4, and then I'm just using 4, 4, 4. Yeah, so not anything particularly unusual there, but hopefully that cleared it up. Let me see if I saw some more questions coming in. So the questions here, we stream simultaneously to Facebook and YouTube. So YouTube, I think, is the best place to watch this. That's where the most people are. So that's where you'll get a lot more of the questions. PIAM, do you use the same patterns for recuerdos? Well, first of all, PIAM is probably one of the more unusual permutations. But any of these permutations you can use for any of the tremolo pieces if you find them comfortable. But no, it's PAMI. And yes, other guitarists, I know Anna uses PIMI, I think, and then Milos Karaduglic, he also used to do IM tremolo. So whatever, someone asked, maybe here we go. What is the most important thing for practicing the tremolo technique? Well, again, the musical goal is to create a sustained musical line. And to do that, you want to have consistency in your sound. So as I and M, or perhaps A, are cycling through, you don't want your technique to take away from the melody, from the sound. You want it to sound even, and it doesn't have to be rhythmic like a machine gun. It can be elastic. You can slow down and speed up, but it needs to be in control, and the sound needs to be consistent and rhythmically consistent as well. So if you have, I often think about tremolo in general as the result of an excellent technique, because there's so many other things that go into it. There's the free stroke movement of all the different fingers, the nail shape, the thumb, hand position, all of that right hand work that we do from day one can be bundled into tremolo technique. And it relies so heavily on all of those aspects. In part, that's why it's such a coveted technique. And still, I think, out of all the things, I don't like to lean on people's individual physiology or what have you, but some people just have a little bit more of a natural tremolo technique than others. It's never come naturally to me, although I have played tremolo pieces because I wanted to. But it's in terms of those people just have that glorious tremolo. You can definitely work on it, but I do think some hands are a little more suited to tremolo than others, in terms of the length of the A finger and all that sort of stuff. Steve is following up on his question. Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying, Steve. So there's a couple of, there's moments in the left hand. There's a couple of points throughout the piece, right, where you get left hand movements which can be tricky and also tricky to connect the notes. Right? He's talking about the third finger here to there. Sometimes we just have to do a quick jump, but there's a couple of things here. So these notes are going to be more important to hold down to the very, very end. If that was the jump, then I'd be worried about it because it's cutting off the melody. But first of all, I think you can get away with it leaving this a little early, and it's not going to disturb the sound. Right? It's more important to focus on the F sharp. And secondly, it comes at a little bit of a partition in the music. So his phrase, we've got these two large sections, but then within them we have sort of 4-bar phrases. One, that's one phrase. The second phrase. The third phrase, and so on. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that between phrases, you actually have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of breaking the line. So if this is the end of the second phrase, very musically transition with a little bit of a slow down and a pause and get away with it very nicely. If that were in the middle of a phrase, I'd be working very hard not to disturb that. But sometimes we find that the music can give us a technical out, if you will, and we're grateful for it. Well, I'll take it, as they say. You know, if it makes it more musical and it relieves a technical challenge, then I'm all for it. That's funny. Allison asked, I'm wondering what I could do to help catch up on theory and be able to understand these analysis better. I love the lessons, but I'm behind. Well, do I have a treat for you, Allison? The last 4 live sessions were all about harmony, and they are still up on the YouTube channel. So just go back into the YouTube channel and you'll find 4 sequential workshops on harmony that actually should take you exactly to that level of analysis. So they're there. And there it is. Happy days, as they say. Well, it is 5:02. That's a very civilized time to wrap things up. I'll say thank you very much for being with me. I apologize if I was a little bit out of it today. Sometimes the days get the best of me and the computer screen is a bit, the computer wins sometimes. I'm sure many of you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially these days. So I was a little bit, maybe not as on top of it as normal, but I hope that you enjoyed that. And that was interesting, and you hopefully maybe some of you had a penny drop, and maybe some of you were inspired to learn this piece. It is, as I said, in this graded repertoire, this is our book that we use in the Academy, the full curriculum. Of course, all the members can download it. It's also, I'm sure, the Sagreras books, I believe it should be in public domain, so you probably find it in, I think it's book 3 of Sagreras. So, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, and normally I might play out the piece, but I feel like I've played this piece so many times in the last hour that you probably got the idea. So take care, everyone. I will be back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Just, you know, some people were a little unclear about when these happen, but it's been 4 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. I do hope to get some more people to come in and do some interviews. I just need to be a little bit more organized about it. I often wake up and think, what am I going to talk about today? So I'll try and get some more guests on here to share their insights and get you inspired. I hope that you're well. I look forward to seeing some of you on coaching calls on the weekend, and be safe, be well. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.